How do you create unique character names that pop out of the page and don't leave the reader feeling like that's a bad character name? They just fit the characters absolutely perfectly. It seems like that name was simply made for that character. How do you create names like that? So here are 5 tips on how to find the perfect name for all of your characters. So if you love stories and storytelling, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell. But the first tip is to use names based on, I don't know why I'm doing this. The first tip is kind of more common sense, but is to use names that are based on your genre. Of course, there are so many genres, but I believe that there's really 2 main genres. The first one is more realist, like the things that happen in the story would actually happen in real life, and they could happen in real life. And the second genre is more fantasy, magical based, the kind of stuff that would never happen in real life, but that is amazing in your imagination. And so if it's a realist story, then you probably don't want to use names like AZOG the Defiler, because it just probably wouldn't exist. You would probably want to use names that are more believable, but that still are unique. Names like Jack Reacher, Bruce Wayne, or Hans Lander. These names are fairly unique, but they could actually exist in real life, and that makes them real and believable. But it also makes them interesting. In stories like the Dark Knight or Jack Reacher novels, those are the kind of names that are perfect for characters. Names that strike a good balance between being unique, but yet being real at the same time. But what about names for more fantasy-based genres? Names that are exciting, or names that are deep, or names that have never been uttered before, and names that are just more creative. How do you create these kind of names? So the second tip is to create a name that has a hidden meaning behind it. For example, a name that means something in a different language. For example, the name Vader basically translates to father in German, and so lots of people could actually guess that Darth Vader was Luke's father before it was actually revealed. That is the power of a name and a hidden meaning behind the name. It creates just another little Easter egg that people can just look out and find. Even the name Jesus means savior, so even God knew the importance of names. And I am a Christian, so I'm saying that seriously. Another way to provide a hidden meaning behind the characters' names is, in some cases, you can actually reverse a word and create a new name out of that word. For example, if you want to create an angry character that is just really angry all the time, then you might be able to take the word anger and reverse it, and it becomes Regna. I don't know, I'm kind of clutching at straws a bit, but some names you can do this with, where you reverse a word of a trait that you want that character to have, and then by reversing it you create an original name that you can name that character. Or my personal favorite, yes, it is probably what most authors have used to create so many amazing names in fantasy, and it's just to completely make it up. It is just to completely make it up. Make a name that has never ever been spoken before. It is a name that will never probably exist in real life. It's never existed before. I just spent less than 5 minutes coming up with a few unique names that just don't mean anything, but they just sound like they sound cool, you know? Ina Edithnia, Sirak Gro, Athnun Gar, Zim Feather, Wakrat Dukit, Senthorpe Fenris, Kayan Narel. Now some of these names just sound a bit weird, but some of them are okay to use in stories. Names like this in real fantasy books include Gandalf, Katniss Everdeen, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Frodo Baggins, Halcyon, or Fenris the Feared. And I could go on and on and on. There's so many. So this is my favorite tip. And the fourth tip is to use baby book names. George R.R. Martin has personally said that he does this, and he actually finds baby book names from other countries to find names that have kind of been under the radar and hidden, and perhaps are more exotic, like tribal names that most people wouldn't probably call their babies, but where they would make great character names in books. And so there's a wealth of ideas in baby books. And so the last tip is also kind of a bit of common sense, but it is kind of relevant as well, because it is to find a name that kind of suits the character, that just like, you know, it suits. And people can do this kind of intuitively. When you hear a name like Brandon or Sally, like, you can kind of picture like what they kind of look like, even without a description of the person, just from the name itself. Names like Grimmer Wormtongue, Minerva McGonagall, or Luke Skywalker, you can kind of picture what that name would look like as a person. Obviously people would imagine different things, but I think in general, if someone hears the name like Snape, they would kind of see someone who's basically not that great of a guy. And if you name a happy, fun-loving protagonist Ukrith Bloodseeker, it probably would wouldn't be that great a name. But those are my 5 tips on naming characters. Here is a quick summary of the 5 tips. The first one is to create names based on your genre. If you think your story is more realist, then create a name that seems like it could be real but is also quite unique. And tip 2 is, if you're in the fantasy genre, then create a name with a hidden meaning. For example, a name that means something different in a different language, or a name that comes from reversing another word. And the third tip is to make up a name from the infinite and limited supply of your imagination. The fourth tip is to find names in baby books or in baby books from different countries. And the fifth tip is to find a name that suits the character, so that if you think of the name, you'll probably also think of the character that is kind of assigned to the name. So those are my 5 tips. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like and comment. What is your favorite character name ever? And why do you think it's your favorite character name? Because then it's all part of the learning process, isn't it? And I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.